month ending stuff. It's on the agenda. This will give us an overview. One of the things that we increased for 2014 was property tax revenues have increased approximately between two counties a little over $1 million, about $1.1 million. So that was encouragement there. I personally believe that we're going to see a small trend of appreciation in the future. So that's good news there with that. So with that, I'd like to move on Order 6A1 that we approved the treasurer's report.
I'll second.
Is there any questions or discussion about the treasurer's report? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nevada East Side Feeder Turnout Project. I want to have Mike give a little, two things, but explain how we got into this, and why we're, and who owns the pipe, so the other board members would not have a good idea.
Yeah, this is a project that would connect to our east feeder. It's a surface mining project, sand, gravel, rock on some parcels that are out near Big Rock Creek. They need a connection, a water connection from us as part of their conditional use permit from LA County. So that's how we kind of got into this. Is they were not going to be allowed to drill a well out there to serve that project, mainly for dust control. There's not a lot of water going to be needed, but that they'll need it for dust control. So this thing's evolved several times since it started in 2011. What it's come down to is a project that will connect to our feeder and provide a small length of pipe and a metering vault just right across the street from our feeder. The rest of it, LA County is going to take care of. They're going to connect to that meter and run the pipe all the way down to the project itself. So Ben has got the bids. We went out to bid on the project. He has the bids back. We got about 5 bids on it. And then also a construction management budget. I've spoken with the principal at Nevada, Jim McGee. He has been here in front of the board several months ago. And he's ready to make the deposits on the project. I told him that, signing contracts with the contractor and approving the budget for construction management would be contingent on having those checks in AVEK's possession. So.
Okay, Mike, but explain to the board about how we're gonna be the ones holding that pipeline, not District 40.
District 40 is going to only own the pipeline that goes from our vault down to the project.
Where?
Down to the project. So once we have a metering vault, it's fairly typical of most of our
That
connections.
must have changed because they weren't gonna take that pipe. Okay, well, Mike, you did not update, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Between when we had the meeting here, I think when we released that for bid and when, just prior to releasing it for bid.
Don't you think the committee should know that? I mean, that is a very important part because we do not take on pipelines with outside people and make deals with them. And the only reason we did this, we spent these years on it, was to, District 40 refused to, and Dave Ryman was in the audience on our committee a couple of times, refused to take possession of that pipeline, but they would not oppose it if AVEK was in possession of that pipeline.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of embarrassing to me as a chairperson between now and that meeting not to know that.
My apologies.
Okay.
What we ended up with was actually owning less than we would have otherwise.
But that's an excuse, okay? I mean, the thing is that we as a committee, we changed something without the committee's approval. That's what's going down here, Mike. You do not make decisions up and beyond what the committee has been informed and surprise us at a board meeting with this. I'm just saying, I mean, we spent a lot of time and hours on this to make this thing work. I know you did too, but that is a major change. Okay, I just want to bring it up.
So I'll turn it over to Ben.
They're very close, so they understood the project. So I think the bids are as good as we're going to get on it. And we would recommend moving forward. We did do some checking for our constructors. They give us two free different entities to check on. They've been working with previously, and we can check the outline and we'll negative entities. Also, for our constructors have them completed the project that we use to make the agency also.
So, okay, so I'll move on to the lower bid for construction of the 238,300.
We have a motion second to approve the low bid for constructors. Discussion, questions?
So, based on these changes, you still feel like it's recommended going forward with this?
Yeah,
Just like-
we were gonna go with it because the pay taxes on our agency, it was only fair to them to try to help them out because the county adamantly said there's no way they were gonna take that pipeline. Until tonight, the committee did not know anything about that was being done the way it's
So
being
now
done.
they're going to?
Well, yeah, well,
charge them
the good thing is about it is they're going to take responsibility of the maintenance on it if something goes wrong. See, the difference is how will we appropriate charging them fees and costs? Because if we had to do the maintenance on the pipeline or something broke, somebody has to be responsible, either us or District 40. They're not a water agency, so one of us had to be, it's not gonna affect, it's
Not adversely
not
affected?
gonna affect AVEK in any
Okay,
way.
thank you.
No, we're not paying for it.
We're paying for anything.
What's the length of the pipeline?
The only pipeline was to go from the east feeder across the street to the Kern. That's all the agency's gonna own.
No, he has to go with the pipeline that District 40. Now, see, Ben, this is the problem. We don't know, you're now talking to a 7-member board that doesn't know what's going on. We used to have a committee that used to know what's going on, and it irks me to death that I'm finding this out tonight, right now, after I just had a meeting last week. Okay? Nobody contacted us, so I mean, this is brand new to us. So how much was the original, before District 40 decided, between that meeting and tonight's meeting, how much was the original pipeline? How many miles? Well, almost.
Roughly a mile.
A mile. A mile.
Oh, okay.
6 inch.
We weren't gonna pay for anything, it's just the way it's making things done.
Any more discussion or questions? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Okay, well, this is the aftermath after 16 years. Basically, the agency, went forward and put a meeting together to get everybody together in a room on the 21st. Wayne and Rob with primaries, had staff there, and I can tell you it was an extremely successful meeting. Got everybody in the room, got everybody to think, and Wayne did a great job on his presentation. Holly tried to work out the sound effects and what she could do, and it was interesting. But I'm going to tell you from my point of view, after the meeting, I had both city representatives come up to me and said, we appreciate what this board has done just to get people there. But the biggest thing that was interesting was when I leave over my car, when I got outside, there was 3 attorneys sitting on there, and they said, you know what, you guys really did a good job, and I said, I appreciate that. I said, I know everybody had a difference of opinion before coming into this meeting, and all AVEK wants to do is promote and assist, not just our constituents, but the other water companies that are not our constituents, to show them that this is good faith. I did say to the 3 attorneys, and I'll repeat it, the way the stipulated judgment says that, we may be the administrators. I told them that if the committee of the 5-member board and one master says that they don't want AVEK involved, I said, I will support that wish. And they basically said, no, that's not what we're looking for. And I said, I just want to let you know that now, that AVEK is here to assist. And you guys, as a 5-member board, it's put together, They can decide where AVEK's position is when it comes to the administration and organization of the agency. And Rob made that point clear, and Dwayne made that point clear, and I will say that for the minutes of that. So it was done very well. Our next meeting is going to be February 17th at 2 p.m. I know there's going to be a lot of people wanting to attend and also call in. Hopefully we get those glitches worked out. I've had many people ask me, is it up yet? Is it posted on a link yet? Okay, I need you to send me an email, let me know that so I can get out to the people I know, because I couldn't hear what we were saying. So that was my take from my point. I sat back and didn't say a word, and I don't know what Rob Point or some of the other directors over in the audience, what their outlook was on it.
Yeah, I thought the meeting went very well, and I think higher staff did an incredible job putting it all together. It was very organized. As Frank said, we let the whole group know that he says that we do the administrators, but we're not jumping in and say we are. Automatically it comes together and gives us that direction. I had the same comments from a lot of people there that very positive.
From the person in the audience, it's great when I was in the audience during the whole process. Everybody had a better understanding of where they're going. So I think it was
Yeah, I thought it was really, I thought it was too bad that for 16 years ago, that's the way the county's going to do theirs, the Board of Supervisors are going to appoint through the 5 Board of Supervisors who the representative is going to be on that seat for the other county. It's not automatically going to be Adam. I kind of thought it would be, but I guess it's not. And then the other 2 are going to be done by the 2 different respective groups, and they're having advisory committees get together, and they're going to collectively then appoint their person who will then take a seat on that. Rob's point was, if it's all possible, to try to shoot for March 1st, and some people said it might take longer to get that done. So basically, it's an info part of it, and all of us should be part of this because we can see how this whole formation is with the Water Master Group, and then which then becomes engineer. Another thing was great was Wagner. You know, the guy's just so knowledgeable about the whole situation that you learn every time I hear that guy talk about, and this is something that needs to be brought up. I didn't realize that he has been a manager, a Mojave, and a water master for the entire Mojave Basin since 1993. It's amazing. There is nobody in the state of California that has that experience as this guy has. So he's seen it, done it. He said the funniest thing was, we met with him before the meeting, and he says, you know what, what everybody's worried about today, they're going to forget 2 months from now. And I thought that was pretty interesting the way he put that, when we were discussing it, because he said there's so every month, every other month, there's going to be something new is going to come up that's going to replace the old, what we thought was a concern. There are going to be new things that we have to deal with. So, very knowledgeable person. I thought it was really good that we, as a board again, we fronted the money, and I had people comment that, said, you guys are, helping us out with these type of people and bringing them up, so for the people to share. So I thought it was pretty interesting.
In regards to an environmental document that was reviewed for the Palmdale Regional Groundwater Recharge and Recovery Project. As a way of background, the Palmdale Water District is proposing a project to do a groundwater recharge and recovery project using tertiary, highly treated tertiary treated wastewater, along with a combination of a dilution factor with state water in order to recharge the groundwater basin. The intention, their concept is to combine these two sources of water, produce a potable source that they can recover, and utilize it within their service area to be able to meet future growth demands within their service area over the next 20-25 years. The Resource Management Committee has been met several times with regards to the project. The board has received a presentation from Palmdale Water District with regards to the project in the past, and they have gone through their preliminary engineering study and prepared this environmental document that allows for the various parties that are in the area to respond and to comment on the environmental document. The letter that you have before you is comments to that environmental document that is consistent with the committee's wishes with regards to the areas where the agency believes that there may be some environmental impacts. And I will say that there's five particular comments that are contained in the letter. 4 of them are predominantly technical type of comments having to do with the recycled water to imported water ratio and how that changes over a period of time. The second comment under project characteristics had to do with how this water is currently being used and what effect that will have moving forward. And under the probably the most important aspect is under section 2.6, where project approvals. Under that aspect, the letter indicates that AVEK approval would be required for the project. The research with regards to the AVEK Act, the State Water Contract, and also some LAFCO requirements, we believe that those approvals would be necessary. An agreement between AVEK and Palmdale Water District would go a long way to making sure that LAFCO is happy and there's no duplication of services with regards to the project moving forward. And so with that in mind, there is an opportunity here for our 2 agencies to get together to begin to talk about ways in which we can partner together and potentially benefit both agencies. And the last paragraph of the letter talks about that as far as moving forward with the project. This letter is not intended to be an agency support or non-support of the project moving forward. It's only intended to provide comments to the environmental document so that they can be placed in the record. We have a consulting firm, Water Systems Consulting, that is preparing a report for the committee and board review that will be ready in February, that would allow the agency to make a more formal stand with regards to its participation in the project moving forward, or a policy statement more than anything else. So at this point, what you have in front of you is a letter that is consistent with the outline that the committee provided, and it provides comment on the environmental document. The deadline for submission of comments is the 29th of this month, and so with the concurrence of the board, this letter will be forwarded on to the Palmdale Water District tomorrow in conformance with the timeline outline.
2.5, when we say reduce the amount of groundwater recharge areas where this recycled water is currently used. Part of that water is, I know, used for farming operations, or currently being used for farming operations, but part of that was to mitigate the nitrate pollution from the water treatment plant. So not only is it, how is it going to affect the recharge, but I don't know how that affects whatever mitigation the sanitation district has to do to reduce the nitrate pollution.
Right, and I think that's what the comment was intended to answer that question.
Okay, that's fine.
Which means we have an allocation from the State Water Project of $21,727 so far for this year. We have a little bit of carryover from last year, so our total from the state, basically wet water, is $22,844. So the notice came out today, this morning at 10 o'clock or so, and they approved this increase in allocation and the carryover. The carryover, they do that pretty much every year, but it's still kind of a formal approval of the carryover. So that's how much we will get from the State Water Project with 15%.
Yeah, I thought we had more carryover.
Well, remember we had, right at the last, we had 2,100 that Central Coast said, hey, we'll do an exchange with you. And so that was the 2,100.
Oh.
Oroville is up to 56%. So last board meeting, we were at 47, so it's taken a jump. It's finally into the 50s, can't believe it. San Luis is up to 40%, and it was up to 34% at last board meeting. So Northern California is at 116% to this date. These storms are coming in just right. I mean, they're getting one a week. They're nice, decent storms, kind of good snowpack. So it continues to improve. And this is where we are right now. So we're looking at 116% of average. This is the 8-station index, which is Northern Sierra precipitation. So you can see we've been climbing just in the last few weeks. And this is the average, the 22 to 98 average. And so we're a little above that. So, this is where we were in trouble last year, is we just got nothing in January. They've said that this January, in fact this was last week, we've gotten more in this January than we had in the last 5 Januaries combined. So we have really been in a very dry cycle. So as refreshing as this looks, this is really the way January ought to look. But good results. Snowpack also improving. Again, you can see the average, the blue shaded area. So this is Northern Sierra is at 74, which is 127% of average. Central Sierra is 118, and Southern Sierra is at 97. Everybody's been saying, well, El Nino is supposed to hit Southern California. And the meteorologist for the department said, well, wait, because the jet stream has pushed a lot of these storms a little further north, so it's been hitting Central and Northern California, but he said there's more in store for Southern California.
We're coming this week,
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So it's, and you can see where we were, well, last year we were just, it was terrible. We were bumping right along. This is last year and the year before. So, we've had some pretty bad snowpacks. So it's nice to get a decent snowpack. So statewide, the average to date is 115% for snowpack. This is taking a look at Oroville, and you can see this, there was word that I think Oroville went up 20 feet in 10 days. And one thing to consider is that this is down at the bottom and you're down in the canyon. So, it comes up pretty fast when you're down in the canyon. But also, we've had a lot of good cold storms, and the last couple of the snow levels come up a little bit, so you get more runoff in those kind of storms. It's been more rain, and it melts off some snow, and you just get some decent runoff. So, improved situation, but still, quite a ways to go. We have a long way before we get into any kind of flood control reserve or anything like that. So again, good news, just got to keep coming. This is the 10-day forecast for the Feather River. You can see that these are the actual numbers. So, snow levels are pretty good, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, not bad. And then the forecast for the next 10 days is 125% of normal. So, again, it's going to keep on coming. That's what the forecast is.
Yeah, the elevations are decent too.
Yeah, there's like, well, of course, it's not going to snow that day. It's cold.
But still, 6,000 feet is, I mean.
No, that's reasonable, yeah. Yeah, you get 6,000 feet, that's a good snowpack. This is San Luis Reservoir, and again, you know, we're continuing to climb. The dark blue is the State Water Project portion. The federal side is the light blue. You know, so we're continuing to chug away in the delta pumping, and most of the increase has, you know, been state project stuff. They actually state project loaned some water to the Bureau late in the year last year, and they paid it back, so that affected this balance also. But it's getting better. Not there yet, not out of the woods by any means. This is kind of a busy chart, but I want to kind of show the board, illustrate kind of, this is delta operations for late last year and early this year. So it goes from October 1st to middle of January. And what these bar, like this is the State Water Project exports. So this is the export pump in the delta. And you can see last year, well, you can't really see it. I mean, we were almost either shut down or not pumping anything. That's what the pumps were pumping in the delta, those orange bars. This is what we've been able to do in December because the water was there. Right at this point, you can see there's kind of a discontinuity. This is when the regulations start kicking in. So we were up about this level, and we had to drop down to this level. It's a fish and water quality. So this line, see this delta outflow? Now a lot of people think, oh, you know, the pumps are sucking all the water out of the delta. This is how much water is going out the bay. You know, so this is going under San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge. This number right here. So you get these big storms that come in. This is how much the State Water Project's pumping. This is how much the Bureau is pumping. So it's pretty small compared to the total overall export. These, see these dotted lines, well, it doesn't really show up very well, but these are the standards that we have to meet. So this is a regulation that we have to hold it below that level. This little glitch right here was a smelt thing that they were worried that we were going to catch smelt. They said that, oh, this last storm, this big storm, brought a bunch of turbidity in. And the smelt, well, there's a theory that there's more, they catch more smelt. What they do is they go through the delta with a net behind a boat, and they catch a bunch of smelt, and they say, oh, there's smelt in the delta, you know. And the reason they catch them is because it's turbid, and the smelt are okay being closer to the surface when it's turbid because there aren't as many predators, you know, they got more cover basically. When it's less turbid, then they go deeper, and then they don't catch as many. They say, oh, there's no smelt, you know. So it's kind of this chicken and egg thing.
So around March, April, the largemouth bass are spawning, and the smelt are up here, and they're eating the smelt. So that means that when they disappear, that's when they start pumping water?
You got it, Director. Well, as long as we don't catch any, as long as, you know, they don't get sucked into the pumps. I heard this week that they caught one smelt. And you know, usually when they catch a smelt like that, they extrapolate. They say, well, that's one that we caught at the pumps, which means, you know, there were probably 10 in the forebay that died, and there's, you know, so they extrapolate these, and it just kind of illustrates, you know, how restrictive some of these fish requirements are. Now, you gotta say that this OMR, this is actually Old and Middle River. And, you know, if you've been down in the Delta, a lot of those sloughs just kind of slosh around. In fact, they actually run backwards sometimes when the tide comes in. So it's kind of going back and forth, salt water, fresh water, kind of going back and forth. And when they kick those pumps on, those two sloughs actually run backwards. And so they have a requirement that you can't run those backwards too much. And that's what this requirement is here, is these negative numbers say you can't make the water run backwards too far. So that's, again, a lot of information, just to kind of illustrate the operations of the Delta, very complex. It's not all driven by hydrology. You can see these big giant spikes, but you know, our pumping was down here. So we were able to capture a little of that, but it's not like you can really take a lot of water out of the Delta at one time. Probability of exceedance for San Luis storage at the end of March. Kind of an interesting title, but basically what it says is, okay, is the State Water Project going to fill our share of San Luis? And you can take this chart and say, okay, let's take the 50% line. There's a 50% chance that we'll get 500,000 in San Luis. Again, I showed this because there's two requirements. This is 1641, which is an old requirement that we had 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, we were able to capture this, and this is how much we would be putting in San Luis. So we had a 50-50 chance, well, it's like, what is it? We had a 45% chance we would fill our side of San Luis. Now we're down here. So these two lines illustrate those are biological opinions that we have to operate to. So again, not as many windows, not as many opportunities to get water out of the south, the Delta. Again, just kind of to illustrate. This is the total. So the previous one was state project share. This is the total for San Luis. Now, what I've been saying is that the state project looks a lot better than the federal guys because they have even more restrictions. So the total, there's like a slim to none chance that you're going to fill San Luis. Total. So this year, what that means to us is anything we have in carryover or anything we have left on the table at the end of the year, it's unlikely we're going to lose that. Because the federal guys will not come anywhere close to filling their side. So again, kind of an interesting chart, but that's the bottom line, is that San Luis, in the old days, you would try to fill San Luis completely by May 1st, and everything in Southern California by May 1st, and it's just getting harder and harder to actually fill that reservoir, especially for the federal guys. This is another probability exceedance chart. This one might be more interesting for you. Hold still. This one is the allocation. So this is a guesstimate at what the state project allocation is going to be in May. So let's see. So if we go at 50%, there's a 50-50 chance that we will get 1.3 million or so, which means we would get a 30% allocation. So there's a 50-50 chance that we get a 30% allocation. So Director Donato is actually probably on, he's got 55% chance of getting 25% allocation. So that kind of shows that we have a 10% chance of getting, what is that? Well, 65% allocation. There's a 10% chance we would get 65% allocation. So interesting chart. It is, it's kind of betting on the horses or the weather, but a lot of it is not, as you saw in the previous chart, a lot of it isn't necessarily driven by hydrology. It's, even if you have a good solid wet year, there's only so much you can pump in the Delta. If you get a wet storm, you're still kind of limited as to how much you can get out of the Delta. And that's really what's kind of putting a lid on state water project allocations. As far as operations, Quartz Hill is now at 6 MGD, but we are kind of in a maintenance mode right now for winter maintenance. So in fact, Quartz Hill is going to be kind of off part-time in coming weeks to do scheduled maintenance. Roseman is off right now, East Side is off right now. Our Palmdale connection is doing about a third of an MGD. We're still doing a little pumping at the 96th Street and the west side. We're continuing to pump. We still got 10 MGD there. This compares with last year at 2015, where we were last year at this time. So again, a lot of scheduled maintenance going on because our demands are down. So I don't know, John, any comments?
We're still selling, even so, we're still selling less water overall this time than last year. Look at
Probably a little bit. It's hard to tell, Frank, because last year's numbers, especially with Quartz Hill, we shut the plant off for 3 days and then bring it on, because you can only run it so low, bring it on at maybe 10 MGD. So it's probably pretty close.
But the west side, you guys are down.
Our wells aren't producing as much because we've been pumping for 2 years without recharging. So it's just the nature of what we've been doing. But we're probably a little less.
Water banking, again, the 96th Street, continue to pump that in. West side extractions. 7 MGD is going to 80th and H, and 3 MGD going to Mojave. You've got 3 bench ranch wells running right now, so this is something we just got on launched in the last few weeks, and that's 4.5 MGD, and that at this point is going to 80th and H, so it's going down to County Water.
How's the suction?
Pretty stable.
Good.
You say Mojave, that's going into the producer.
The north feeder. Yeah.
Yeah, I should say Mojave tanks.
Yeah.
The Metropolitan, I've been briefing you on the exchange and storage program. We have a draft contract from Metropolitan that I need to come to the finance committee and kind of discuss.
So they're moving forward, that's great news.
Yeah. They've got a draft contract for us to look at, and they broke it into 2 contracts, one storage and one exchange, and they also are drafting a letter, jointly drafting.
Sure, there's another project, sure.
Yeah. Kind of related to that.
Hey, don't leave down.
Talked to Michael Engelbrecht this afternoon, and we may come to the finance committee again because our bond rating is better. Some of the exchanges, our coverage ratio is better. Rates have gone down, and a year ago we were talking about should we refinance some things, refund some bond. It looks like it might be an opportunity to do something. So she was estimating, say, $400,000 a year. So it's something we need to we might have Michael Engelbrecht come to the finance committee. Yeah, I think that's good news. Continue to work on storage and exchange programs with other customers.
You have so much money, it takes money's blown, that's the problem.
That's right. And there's been some activity in the legislature. There was a bill introduced to require a vote of the people on the tunnels.
That'd be great, I hope they put it on the ballot.
There's a couple of efforts, I think, to put that on the ballot, to have actually people vote on it. One thing that kind of affects that is, and this has been brewing for quite some time, I don't know, maybe Lee knows the background on this, but San Diego had filed a suit some time ago against MWD because MWD was putting a lot of state project costs in their bills. And San Diego didn't think that the allocation of cost was right. Went to court, and San Diego won. So this is probably it's going to have a lot of ripple effects on how Met operates, and I don't know, maybe on the Twin Tunnels.
Mr. Paris, you've been appointed the representative from AVEK to the new and exciting and exotic Water Master Committee, which we don't know too much about. Could you please, in rough terms, just since it's new, just explain what is going to happen?
Sure. The next step is I'm the first person selected through the AVEK board. That is one of the permanent spots. Waterworks 40 will have a spot on the board. Then the public water suppliers, which include, I think, about 11 public water suppliers. Palmdale is one, Lancaster, Waterworks 40, Quartz Hill, and several others. And they will select their representative to the board. And then the landowners, there's an exhibit in the judgment that has all the landowners that will be voting for 2 representatives on the board.
Okay, and what's going to be the main job of the Water Master over time?
The main job of the Water Master Board is to select the Water Master Engineer, and then to help come up with policies, procedures, regulations for running the Water Master Board with the Water Master Engineer. And the main job of the Water Master Engineer is to make sure that the judgment is enacted, fulfilled, and that everybody follows what the judgment requires as far as water use.
All right, so that means that the Water Master will be checking, pumping?
That's correct. There will be, everyone who's using water will have to be metered on the water use. The Water Master will be making sure that there's not too much water being used, and to make sure that the allocations of water is people don't go over that.
And does the Water Master Board monitor the aquifer to see if it goes up or down?
That's exactly right. We
Okay.
have to make sure that the aquifer stays healthy, that we continue taking only what the native state field allows. And right now in the judgment at year 17, we can look at what the condition of the aquifer is and make a decision if, with the court's approval, if we can increase the amount of the native state field.
That's good. So if we have some wet years, and yes, indeed, it does come up, you're saying that the Water Master could petition the court to give everybody permission to pump more water?
That's my understanding.
Well, we'll have to see how it goes. At this point, are there any penalties for people that pump more than they should?
Presently, we're in on December 23rd, when the judgment was signed, we started our 7-year ramp down period. And so the judgment is fairly specific about how people have to get down to the allocations they were given by the court.
All right.
And I believe for the first 2 years, it's pretty liberal in the amount of water that can be pumped.
Right. So as an AVEK director, AVEK will be called upon to supply additional water to all of these retailers that provide water, it seems to me, because how else can you get water into the Antelope Valley?
That's correct. AVEK will be the primary supplier of supplemental water to the valley, and that is something that's going to be very important for our agency to be able to go out, find the water resources, and make sure that the water comes into the valley for those purposes.
Sure. And are these directors of the Water Master Board paid? Is this a compensated position? And if so, who pays?
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that, actually. I guess we won't know the answer to that until the Water Master Board is established.
I see.
I know the Water Master process, the engineer and the Water Master staff and everything will be paid by assessments on those pumping water from the valley.
Right. Well, best of luck, and it's a pioneering effort, although I know other adjudications throughout the state have operated under water masters, and it seems successfully because we don't hear much about it. So.
Correct. I am happy that we finally are done with this adjudication. I think it's been incredibly divisive for the valley.
Yeah.
And now it's time for us to all get together and make it work, and in a way that will benefit our valley. And that's what my intent is. And
Sure.
my promise to our taxpayers, I will do that. Thank you.
All right. Well, best of luck.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.